The special edition of The Pulse. Yes, I'm here because we are building up to the main speech by the flag bearer of the New Patriotic Party, who also happens to be the Vice President of this Republic. This is a seminal one for him. Since his election as a flag bearer, this is his first major policy speech. And we expect that he will be laying out his own vision. He said that he has his own vision. Today, he needs to spell that out. He would have to create a certain distance between himself and his current boss, the President of the Republic. How does he do that? That's why today we are focusing on this. My team are on the ground. We'll be joined pretty shortly by my colleague, Kojo Brace, and the team on the ground at the UPSA. You want to stay with us. We also will be bringing you some analysis as we anticipate what he will be saying and whether or not he can indeed create that distance between himself and the current president. You want to stay with us here on The Pulse. My name is Evans Mensah. I'll take you shortly to the venue for the speech today. Bawumia Speaks is how it's been billed, and it is a very important day for him. He really now needs to show us that he's indeed his own man. And what he says today will go a long way to convincing people or doing otherwise. And I want to quickly bring it right now. The head of the Political Science Department at the University of Ghana, Professor Ali Dusedu, joins us for a conversation, and we'll take you to the UPSA pretty shortly when my colleagues join us. But, Prof, great to have you join us. How important is this speech we're anticipating for Dr. Bawumia?
Thank you so much to you, Evans, and to your listeners. I think it's very important because we now believe that moving towards 2024 and beyond, I think this debate has been started as far back as 2008, that candidates will need to tell Ghanaians what they want to do for them or what they seek to do for them. Not just say it, but support it with a lot of evidence. So it is a very important speech for him to be able to tell us his vision and the policies that he has for the Ghanaian people. But this is also an opportunity for him to cut his umbilical cord from the MPP administration and to establish his independence and his legacy as a candidate. But this is also an opportunity for him to prove his credibility, because a lot of Ghanaians believe that a lot of things were said by him and his party in the run-up to the 2016 elections, which has not been done. So whatever he is going to say is just a repetition of what was said and wasn't done. So I think at this point in time, he will need to prove beyond reasonable doubt that I'm not just making political statements, but I'm actually committed to implementing what I'm going to say. So I expect Evans that he will say something about the economy at least, which has been one of his strong areas of expertise, and the fact that we have had a very troubled economy, and for the fact that he was the head of the economic management team, and all the things people say about him with regards to the economy. I think this is an opportunity for him to be very dominant and establish his credibility around that area. So it's a very important day for him, not just to tell Ghanaians what he intends to do as a leader and his party, but what he as an independent candidate is going to do for Ghanaians.
And you make the point about independent candidate. You don't mean it in the context of him running as an independent candidate like Asah-Asante. What you mean is showing that he's his own man and that he can really come out of the shadow of his boss, somebody he served since 2008. Isn't that the biggest challenge today? That he would have 2 hours through speech to demonstrate that he can be his own man, that he can be independent?
Yes, Evans, exactly the way you've explained it. That's what I actually meant. But I think there are two things here. It's not just telling us his vision, his plans for this country, but it's to convince Ghanaians to believe in that vision and plan, especially given the record that we have in this country about political promises and how political parties commit to implementing those policies once they are elected. So just telling us what he has for this country will not be able to convince the skeptics, will not be able to convince the independent-minded voters. Maybe that will receive a loud applause from his stronghold, but to be able to move beyond the NPP stronghold and convince business people whose businesses are struggling, the ordinary Ghanaians who are struggling to make ends meet, the very rational voters who need a kind of evidence to be able to buy into policy decisions of political parties. He will have to move beyond just enumerating what he intends doing and to convince us that it is not yet another political sloganeering, but he's actually committed as a leader and provide evidence that he'll be able to do it. I think that will be more convincing. And I think he can blend all this in the very limited time that he has.
You talk about evidence, though, and that really is what this will come down to. And he will obviously be addressing a core room of people who should be his supporters. And we saw John Mahama do something quite interesting, where in his own very significant speech last year, he brought in civil society, neutrals, I mean people that we don't know to be affiliated to any political party into the room, to give him that sense of, well, at least they buy into what he's saying, even if that's not what the story is, but the optics are important. To what extent do you expect, Dr. Bawumia, to, in that room, the optics are important? It's not always about what you say, but also how what you say is perceived, right? To what extent must he pitch himself to that floating voter elite, middle class category of people, civil society folks who appear to be neutral? Isn't that an important constituency he also needs to appeal to today?
Exactly, Evans. I think those are the kingmakers, to be honest with you. The floating voters, the business community who run our economy or who are the backbone of our economy. I don't think, in terms of evidence, yeah, he could use that John Dramani Mahama strategy way, but that's not actually what I'm advocating for. I think when I refer to evidence, it has to be backed by proving maybe statistics or a reliable source. So, for example, if we say that we have inherited a very weak economy, there should be either World Bank statistics or Ghana Minister of Finance, those things to support the broken economy that is inherited, and efforts that you have made to able to make it work with statistics, verifiable statistics. If you say that when I come to government, I'm going to make sure maybe I reduce let's say unemployment. So you have to provide evidence. Maybe currently these are the number of unemployed youth we have or graduates. If I come to government, these are my initiatives. I'm going to create this vehicle or program that will employ this number of people, and this is how I'm going to fund. It's going to cost me this amount of money, and this is how I'm going to get resources to be able to fund it. So those kind of evidence will convince people rather than just giving rhetoric. So beyond just even bringing the people who can attest to what he's going to do, I think verifiable data that we can all rely on and to convince us that this is actually a serious discussion or conversation rather than the usual political rhetoric. It will be in the best direction to do that.
Please stay with me, because I've just been joined by Dennis Miracles Obwaji, spokesperson for Dr. Bawumia, joins us via phone right now from the UPSA, and very shortly we'll get to connect to my colleagues on the ground so we can get a few ahead of that major speech later tonight. Miracles, thanks for your time here on The Pulse as we build up into that major speech by the Vice President and the candidate of your party. What should we expect?
Thank you, my brother. I think today marks the beginning of the Vice President's journey to become President in 2025 for the Republic of Ghana. This afternoon, we should expect the Vice President to provide clarity with just reasons why he believes he's the best person to steer the affairs of this country going into the future. expect the Vice President to give highlights of specific alternative policies that he believes will be able to drive Ghana into a more prosperous future that we all expect. He's going to take us on a journey of where we have come from and try to give a vivid graphic representation of where we are as a country and what, in his view, he believes will be the solutions that we need to confront the challenges ahead of us as a country. And so we're really asking everybody to pay very close attention to what the Vice President is going to say. The whole objective is to ensure that every single voter in this country has a reason which are issues-based to vote for Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia as president come election 2024.
And give us the background to this. Why has this become necessary for the vice president? I mean, he has been talking even after he was elected. He's had many public platforms to speak about national issues, but this has been couched as a very unique seminal moment for him. Why is that?
Let's just say it marks the beginning of a very important journey in the life of the Vice President politics. This is the first time he's putting himself out there on a ballot paper to be elected into any office at all in this country. You would recall that the Vice President, since he came into the forefront of politics in this country, has been advocating for issues-based politics, issues-based campaigning. And so since 2008 and 2012, 2016 elections, he has been one of the people who consistently, everywhere he finds himself, will be pushing for politicians to drive their elections and politics with issues. And so he believes that if he's going to begin campaigning, or he's going to start his campaign for election 2024, at least it will be prudent for him to use this platform to itemize or give a highlight of the broad issues that he believes will be pursuing if he's elected as president. And so it is definitely going to be an aggregation of some of the issues that he's been talking about, but as part of this will be some of the feedback that he has taken from the people throughout his tenure as vice president, the things that he has seen that he believes could be done in certain ways going into the future. Those things will be itemized today. I mean, we've already had a vice president say that the philosophy is the same, but the paths are definitely going to be different. And so it's important that he uses this opportunity to highlight the different paths that he believes we would need as a people going into the future. The challenges confronting this nation in 2024 are definitely different from the challenges that we were confronted with in 2020, and definitely different from the challenges confronting us in 2016. And so the issue is that what are the challenges confronting us in 2024? How is the vice president envisaging or seeing these challenges? And what are the solutions he's preferring for these challenges? And so I think we should see this as that solemn moment where we sit behind our TVs, our radio sets, and clearly listen to the vice president and also make our decisions, our informed decisions as to who we believe to be leading us going into the future. I mean, it's clear that predominantly the two leaders are His Excellency John Dramani Mahama and Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, but we should have a reason why it should be Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia or otherwise, and that's what he's going to be doing this afternoon.
You use the words different path. He himself has talked in the past about he has his own vision. Do you admit that his biggest challenge tonight is illustrating to us in very clear terms, backed by evidence, how he's different from his current boss and the administration he's been part of, at least for the past 7 years?
I mean, he's been different from Nana Akufo-Addo is without doubt. I mean, he doesn't need to necessarily show any extraordinary evidence. It's a matter of fact, backed by data, that no two leaders are the same. Former President Rawlings definitely was not the same, did not have the same leadership style as former President Mills. And even though His Excellency John Dramani Mahama was vice president to former President Mills, surely we all admit that his leadership style was completely different from former President Mills. And in a similar manner, you agree that Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo's leadership style definitely has been different from President Kufuor. So, I mean, if you want evidence of whether his leadership style will be different or not from Nana Akufo-Addo, he doesn't need to prove anything. The data in existence show clearly that no two leaders are the same. But what is important is that he stated clearly that the philosophy remains the same. The philosophy of the New Patriotic Party is that the enabling environment should be created for every Ghanaian to be able to thrive. And that is why if you watch all the tenor of the New Patriotic Party in Ghana, you realize clearly that during the President Kufuor era, very clear policies that will provide the baseline for the survival of every Ghanaian was introduced. So talk of the National Health Insurance Scheme, talk of the school feeding program, talk of the free maternal care, all those capitation grants, the school feeding. Now Nana Akufo-Addo brings the free senior high school. So the NPP's philosophy is clear. Let us provide that baseline platform for every Ghanaian to be able to thrive, to serve as a springboard for every citizen to be able to move into the next level. So that basic thing, that basic philosophy still remains with the Vice President. But of course, how these things are going to be done will differ from leader to leader. And so maybe other than that, certain things were pursued using the left path. What Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia is saying is that under his leadership, he may pursue that same principle, but using a different path. And that would clearly show in his speech today. And so if there's any evidence you are going to be looking for, it is for you to identify some of the different paths, clear-cut different paths from what some of the things that Nana Akufo-Addo has done. That is not to say that there is anything wrong with what Nana Akufo-Addo might have done. But the point is that every vision has a terminal end. Every vision has an objective. Nana Akufo-Addo's vision clearly comes to an end in 2024. By law, he would not be able to have any other mandate to continue as a president. And so that is where a new leader emerges. And that new leader must also pick up a vision that continues from where the current leader is leading us, living. And in doing that, three things will come to play. Where did he take us from? Where are we? What are the things that we've been able to achieve? The new leader would have to protect those things we've been able to achieve. And then clearly tell us the things that are outstanding that we haven't been able to achieve. Of course, there are a lot of things that Nana Akufo-Addo has achieved, but surely so many other things he has not been able to achieve. The new leader should be able to consolidate the ones we've been able to achieve, and then give us clear-cut strategies as to how going into the future we'll be able to pursue the ones that the current leader was not able to achieve in order to bring prosperity to the people of Ghana.
And stay with me, Miracles. I still have with me Dr. Alidu Seidu, who's the head of the Political Science Department at the University of Ghana. Dr. Alidu Seidu, you've just had Miracles there. Now, Dr. Bawumia has been the vice president under this current government. He would today, as you've just heard there, tell us how his path will be different from the president, his current boss, but also spelling out what his vision is and how that then is different from the current boss. Can he successfully maneuver this, though? Because he's been the vice president. Definitely, he would also have to run on the record of Akufo-Addo. In fact, he will run on his own record. And that record is not entirely without blemish. In fact, it's with significant blemish, as we've seen where the economy is, etc. So he has to take the benefits and then has to also take the liabilities to this. In acknowledging that, though, how does he go about telling us how his path is different from the Akufo-Addo when he's been part of this path from day one? And how does he sell this new vision for us in a way that again becomes convincing for us to then say, okay, well, we've had you, and now we know you can do something different from what we've been used to in the last 7 years?
Thank you so much, Evan. I think it's a very delicate job for His Excellency the Vice President to do. One, like you mentioned, there were a lot of good things the NPP government has been able to achieve. And definitely, he can't run away from those good things. He has to campaign on the record of those things. But there are also a lot of things that the NPP government did that Ghanaians are not happy. And he has to be very careful in not associating himself to those things. But what I do believe is that he can do this in a brilliant way by not apportioning blame, but emphasizing his point of departure. So yes, this was what we managed to do, this was what we made, this is what we did, and this is moving forward, what we intend doing, or what I intend doing as a leader. And he has to do this by emphasizing, one, his soft skills, or skills generally, his experience, his talent, and how all those qualities will be brought to bear in achieving his vision. But two, it will be very important to point towards the direction of resources, especially finance, where he's going to get resources or how he's going to mobilize resources to be able to achieve the things that he promised to do when Ghanaians repose confidence in him by voting for him 2024 December. So I think it is more about emphasizing his point of departure, not just stating it, but evidently backing them in terms of how his background, his training, his experience, his skills and talent can help him achieve what he is telling us he's going to do. But also how he is able to mobilize revenue and resources to be able to achieve them. So it is a very delicate thing for him to completely rubbish the setbacks of this current government. I don't think he can do that, since he's going to campaign on the good part of this government. So what he should do is to emphasize the good part of the government, but tell us his point of departure, how he as an individual, his ability, his talent, his capacities can help him achieve the vision in his profession, but also how he's going to mobilize resources to be able to do that. So I think if he's able to emphasize this in that particular perspective, convincingly, people may believe him.
And there are some very unpopular decisions this government had taken that had pitched them firmly against the public. How categorical must he be today in demonstrating to the public, and he's going to go to them, attempt to get them to vote for him? How categorical must he be today in getting the public to appreciate that, well, I am not the boss, and I, in essence, did not sanction this? Do you expect him to even be that categorical?
Yeah, I think he can be, because in the past, I've heard people who defend the vice president saying that he wasn't in charge, because if you are the vice president, the president takes all the decisions. So if that is the case, then that technically makes him a lame duck vice president. But on the other hand, there have been a lot of people who have defended him for being remarkable as a vice president, the innovative ideas and policies he has brought to bear on the growth of this country. So if you are saying on one breath that he's lame duck because, not essentially lame duck, because he is being led by the president, he doesn't have the opportunity to maneuver and be innovative, then on the other breath, you are saying he has done all these things. There is a kind of a little bit of contradiction. So what I think is that there are a lot of policy decisions that he might have disagreed with, make his impact and disagreement known, but still, because it's not the final, the back doesn't stop with him, he can only make his impact, input and disagreement, but it should be implemented by maybe the president or the minister or whatever I say. And that is why maybe when I take over and I'm in charge of everything, these policies may not be repeated under my watch. And I'll be very careful how I deal with it. So he has to be very careful not to step on a lot of toes, but he has to be very categorical in when he's disassociating himself with some of these things.
And for him to do that, he definitely must have the buy-in of his boss currently and other team members around him, other the economic management team, knowing what he's about to say, so that when he's done, at least there is unity of purpose and everybody goes behind the message. I want to go back to Miracles on that. Miracles, how extensive has this consultations been towards today in terms of what he is about to say? And what is the extent of buy-in into what he's about to say? Because you said he needs to chart a new path and he'll be telling us his own path. Well, there are many in your party who believe that, well, the path that he's been on with the president is the path. So why do you want to chart a new path? That then goes to the point about consultations before today. How extensive has it been? Hello, Miracles.
I think one of the points that I need to make shortly is the fact that the vice president's position on a new vision in a different path is no way saying that he's disassociating himself from the current path or the current president or the current team. That point I think needs to be made forcefully. But you see, like I said earlier, every vision that you set for yourself as a president for every country must be within a context. And so, by the time you were coming to office in 2016, there were specific challenges that were confronting the nation, based on which you would look at the challenges and carve where you believe you would be able to take the nation to. But you should be mindful that you would have not more than 8 years to be able to prosecute that. And so, everybody working with you would work with you solely based on the vision you've started for yourself, but mindful of the fact that it must be within a certain framework or time frame. Now, we are in 2024. Nana Addo Akufo-Addo's vision and plans that he has, this is the time to do an appraisal of that vision, know where we have come from as a nation, what was it that Nana Addo Akufo-Addo wanted to achieve, how much of it have we been able to achieve, what is left to be done, which has not been able to be done within the period. And then, as the next leader, it is on that premise that you would also develop what your vision will be for the nation for the next 8 years should you have the power. Because you cannot have the vision based on nothing. You must definitely do an assessment of what it is that you are going to get yourself into. Then you'll be able to define for yourself what it is that you think you can take us. So the vice president say you have a new vision, basically is saying that where we are, we definitely need to come up with a new vision. We need a new plan. We need to have a new ambition. Because what it is that we came to meet, we have done so much within the period, and there needs to be the next phase of it. And so that clearly is what he means by having a new vision. Starting a new path is very, very simple and clear. There is no doubt that even when we sit in the same room as a government, I mean, you can ask Professor Lidu, even in the political science department, as the head of department, he will agree that when they go for departmental meetings, there are lecturers and other unit heads in the department who may disagree with some of the decisions or directions to which he will be leading the department. But once the collective decision is made, every single person in the political science department would have to conform, and they will have to pursue that objective that has been set by the collective group as the political science department. But that doesn't mean that everybody in that department at that time agrees to the direction in which Professor Lidu would be leading the political science department. That does not also mean that that collective responsibility will be shared, will be ignored by any of the political science department members. Once the decision is taken by the government, the vice president, all members of cabinet, and all of us who work with the government align, and we must pursue it with the latter. But it doesn't mean that all of us within the government at that time would agree to the direction with which we are going. So definitely, you should expect that once a new leader emerges out of the party, definitely that leader would definitely pursue certain visions, certain objectives that would depart from some of the directions of the party that we took with the curriculum. And that is in no way, it is in no way to say that you have any problem with the government or you are disassociating yourself with the government. Every leader has their own style, and every leader has their own way of doing things. And that is already evidential through whatever social studies that we have across the world, across countries. There is no way that leaders from the same political party or even leaders, President Obama's leadership skills or style is completely different from what we are experiencing from Joe Biden. And yet Joe Biden was President Obama's very close vice presidential candidate. So I don't think we should have any controversies at all when it comes to this issue of starting a new path or going to a new direction as stated by the Vice President. This is a new leader with his own vision. The vision is basically saying that I am taking off from where we are now, looking at what we have been able to achieve, protecting it, and then identifying the gaps. And the ones we haven't been able to do, then I'll pursue those ones. I think this is the finest you can find anywhere. That is not in any way saying that the Vice President is departed or is disassociating himself from the current government. What it means is that it shouldn't be difficult at all for him to itemize clearly what this new path is. And I can assure you that by the end of this speech today, you should see clearly that this is a complete departure from what is transpiring or used to transpire under the same government that the Vice President is part of. That does not in any way mean disassociation. Simply means that from where we are, this new path is what we believe can take the country to the next level.
Miracles, please stay with me. And this is our special build-up into the Bawumia Speaks major address that we're expecting at 5 p.m. from the University of Professional Studies, UPSA. Our team is on the ground to be crossing over to the UPSA premises pretty shortly. This, as you've heard from his own spokesperson, it is a seminal day in his life. It is the first time as a flag bearer of the New Patriotic Party that he gets to stand on his own 2 feet and give us his unique message, a message that he says will give us a path that is different from what we've been used to in the last 7 years. Although he says the framework is still the same, the philosophy is the same, but the path towards delivering on the key policy items, he says, will be different. Bawumia himself has said he now also wants to show us that he is his own man, but has his own vision. He will lay out that vision, and then we can assess. You can trust that we'll do that at the end of the day, whether that vision is substantially different from what we are used to. There's a lot to go on, a lot to chew and unpack today as we build up into that major speech by the Vice President at the UPSA. Also joining me right now for a conversation is Dr. Asah-Asante. He's also a senior political science lecturer at the University of Ghana. A lot of political brains from that department indeed joining us for this conversation. This very important day for the Vice President and the flag bearer of the ruling New Patriotic Party. Dr. Asah-Asante, I'm grateful that you could join us as we begin to look forward to what we are expecting to hear from the Vice President. Let me start with you on that. What's your own expectation going into this speech?
Thank you, Evans, for the opportunity. I think that, Dr. Bawumia, with his current new position as a flag bearer, he should come out with something different. Otherwise, it's going to be the whole story, packaged in another form. But if that is going to be the case, then it's going to be a difficult one for him. But I expect him to part from it and then come out. But as to the real, the substance in terms of the departure is what we are looking forward to. Maybe he has something new that we want to know. Because as far as I'm concerned, all that he has demonstrated for the past almost 8 years. That is what we are seeing. But ideas are always abound. So I still hold my cards on my chest because he can come out with some surprises. We look forward to it.
Indeed. And for you, when you say you're looking forward to some surprises, there's a key question that emerges though. If he's going to chart a new path and illustrate the journey and the strategy to executing that new path, or also going to tell us his own unique vision, not everybody in the party, I guess, will believe that that is a smart strategy. Even if everybody agrees, he must sell it to them before he tells us. And we all know, I mean, with the intelligence we have, that even at the cabinet level, even within the economic management team, there are significant disagreement on what to do and how to do in terms of government policy when it comes to the economy. What's your expectation in terms of the work he should have done before today in getting everybody else who matter in the party and in government to buy into this new path that he's about to tell us? Because that can be a bit difficult to maneuver, considering the likes of Kennedy Point and Co in the party, who can go to town and say stuff that can undermine you. Do you expect that he would have done a great work in terms of negotiations getting the buy-in, but post the speech too will be a very critical stage where everybody else must be aligned behind the message.
It is a difficult one, but he is the man behind the driving wheel. So he knows how to navigate his way through this tricky journey. But one thing I expect him to do, which experienced as he is, he should have done some consultations. Yes. However, it doesn't matter the differences that will emerge from such consultation. He should be able to do something before now so that at least, even if he doesn't get anybody, he doesn't get all the people, let me put it that way. The small amount of people that he get will be able to get the message across to others so as to get everybody on board. In politics, you don't expect everybody to agree with you. That is also a fact, and I'm not oblivious of that. So yes, hard as he wants to try, there are people who would definitely disagree with him, who go to town and say things to undermine whatever he does and all that. But he has to remain focused and come out with something that at least a few people initially will rally around, and then the ripple effect will get to everybody and you move everybody along. That means that his message should be the one that really resonates with the people. His message is the one that gives hope, and that it doesn't give more work for his advocates to be able to do work on them, because he comes out with something less than this. And of course, the team that speaks for him is going to do a lot of work running around, and it's going to be difficult for them. But I expect that all things being equal, you should be able to rise up to the occasion and come and tell us something. But I know that there are difficulties for him. And when post the speech, a lot of questions are going to come up. And that is where he should be able to have that level of tenacity to be able to withstand them and then deal with them. And he should be able to be forthright with the issue. Where things have gone wrong, he should be bold and accept it and decide that, yes, I admit that here we did not do right. I take that blame and I want to chart a new path. And this time around, trust me, this is what I'm going to do. As to whether Ghanaians will trust him or not, that is not in my province to say that. It is the duty of Ghanaians to look at that and then make the assessment.
And Doc, this will also go to show how united the party is behind him, considering all the cracks that we knew. Yeah, I mean, and that is going to be important, is it not, going forward? After this speech, if everybody else unites behind him, even those with grievances go out and defend his speech, it is an opportunity, is it not, for the party to use this, post the speech, to show that they are united.
Oh, that is a fact. They need to be able to do that homework so that at the end of the day, whatever comes out as differences, they will be able to mend them and then put behind them and move on. Whether the party likes it or not, today he's their flag bearer. So in spite of their differences, it is incumbent upon them to be able to support the flag bearer to succeed. Otherwise, they will sing together. So getting them united post the speech, it is a tax for the vice president and his team, and it's also a tax for the party itself if they really want to break the 8 and maintain power for the 10th term running.
On that same point, do you agree this will be a test of how united the party is behind their new leader? Hello, Professor Alidu Seidu.
Oh, Evans, I thought the question was directed to...
Yes. I was asking you if you share in that view that today will be a test of how united the entire party is behind their new leader, considering that he's going to tell us his new path and what happens after.
Yeah, I agree with you, Evans, because one thing we all expecting him to do today is to create a point of departure. And when you are creating a point of departure, it does not necessarily mean that you are saying the past is bad, but there may be disagreements about the past, i.e. the policies that were formulated, the way they were formulated, or even the way they were implemented. So creating a point of departure means that you are going to disagree with certain things that was done in the past. So definitely, there may be people who will not be very happy with your bluntness, your honesty, or even trumpeting your complete expertise that will help you achieve what the previous government wasn't able to do. One good thing he could do, and I believe he might have even done it before today's speech, is to build consensus. Consensus building is one of the most important tools that you can use to rally people around. So there should have been consensus building before today's speech, and they should be same after today's speech, so that people who felt that they have not been treated well, or the speech that he has given has not portrayed them in a bad light, or he's actually undermining the administration, will be able to air their grievances, and this will be addressed. Because honestly, today is a very significant day in his life and in his political career, and he has to be very blunt. There are lots of things. When we say point of departure, like Dr. Asah-Asante mentioned, he is free to admit that there were things we've done in the past that wasn't good. And I not even apologizing, but saying that if I become the leader, I'll make sure we do it right, or we do it differently. It is part of point of departure and honesty. And people believe that the current politics that we practice lack honesty and sincerity. So making those bold statements like this will definitely hurt a lot of people. So there should be an attempt before today and after today to build consensus behind the scenes, and to get everybody, whether you disagree with him or not, to rally behind him, and at least not even openly express that kind of disagreement and rebuke. It should be done in private, so that he can learn his lessons and then move the party forward towards the election that we're going to have.
A very, very fascinating day indeed in the life of the vice president and how he maneuvers it. Let me go back to Miracles. Miracles, I'm just curious. In terms of the audience today in the auditorium, how diverse should we expect that audience to be? Hello, Miracles. Oh, we may have lost him right there. And my team on the ground will be joining us pretty shortly as we build up into the main speech at 5. The first major speech has been described as seminal by his own spokespersons for Dr. Bawumia. His speech to really illustrate that he's his own man. He has his own vision. He's going to chart a new path. We've heard all these expressions used today by his spokesperson in this particular conversation, but he also keen to stress that it doesn't mean that it is a value judgment being made on the policies that he's been part of over the last 7 years, and a declaration that those policies have failed, but in essence, he's just indicating that he has a different way of implementing some of these policies within the confines of the philosophy that he still holds dear, that the MPP represents. Miracles is back with Miracles. I'm just curious when it comes to the audience today in the auditorium. How diverse is that audience going to be?
Oh, it's a very broadly diverse audience we have this afternoon. We have from the clergy, we have from the trade unions, the labor unions, we have the market women, we have the clergy, we have traditional authorities, we have members for the diplomatic corps, we have the student unions here. Almost every group in this country is represented here in the auditorium this afternoon.
And why
persons with disability? I mean, I can go on and on and on.
And what's the thinking behind that?
Well, I mean, this is the man who is seeking to be the next leader of the republic. Definitely, almost everybody in this country would want to see what it is that he has for them. In as much as he would not have the time to be able to go into the details of everything and touch everywhere. The highlights will be there, and the details will be captured in the manifesto. And so immediately the announcement was made that this day would come. You had several groups calling in and requesting that they are giving invitation to come and listen to the vice president. And so once that kind of request comes, you have no choice than to grant it. So even though we invited several groups, there are several other bodies who made a request themselves to be part, and we duly granted them the seat. And so inside the auditorium will be a diverse group of people representing almost every corner and every group of people in the country.
I mean, Dr. Asah-Asante, why do you agree that this is important, that the look and feel of this, the optics of this is also important, and that in the room to be diverse, to at least come across as if addressing or attempting to address everybody's needs, if you like, and this speech must address, the concerns of all these diverse groups in the room. How important is that?
Well, politics, consensus is key. And consensus means that we have taken all shades of opinion to consideration. And the reflection of it is the people that you see from all walks of life within the party and outside it there. So that is critical if you really want to maintain some semblance of peace and then position of unity within the party. It is critical for that to be seen.
And we'll be taking you to the UPSA premises pretty shortly. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. I will be joined shortly by my colleague, Winston Amma, who is the Deputy Head of Political Desk. You've just been listening to the head of the Political Science Department at the University of Ghana Political Science Department. He heads that. Dr. Ali Dusedu, he had the senior lecturer at the same department. That's the Dr. Ali Dusedu. He's a senior lecturer there at the University of Ghana Political Science Department. And then you have the spokesperson for the Dr. Bawumia himself, Miracle Sobwaji, also talking to us about what to expect. We now have a fair picture of what we should look forward to at 5, which is just an hour and 10 minutes away. And we will build into that a bit more. We'll get to the ground and get your reactions in real time. You've just heard that those who are going to be in attendance in the auditorium, the audience will be very diverse. My colleague, Kojo Brace, and the team already on the ground will be getting us a sense of the anticipation going into this, the expectations also from these diverse groups, waiting to hear from the Vice President. Winston will join me, and we'll begin to break down a bit more why this is so important for the Vice President, but for the MPP, and why he must get this right. Stay with me. Thanks for staying with us. This is our special build-up into the speech by the Vice President, who is also the flag bearer of the New Patriotic Party. He's delivering what his people describes as a seminal speech today at the UPSA. If you're just joining us, we're going to be crossing over to the UPSA auditorium, where the Vice President is scheduled to deliver a significant landmark speech. And just before we came back on air, we've been speaking to his spokesperson, and he's told us that as far as they're concerned, and in terms of the planning for today, he is expected to indicate the new path, the path that will be different from what we've been used to in the last 7 years, and how he's different from how things have been done and implemented over the last 4 years. Bawumia himself has talked about that he's his own man and that he also has his own vision. Well, his spokesperson tells us today is when he spells out how his vision is different from the vision of his boss. So there's a lot riding on today's speech. We'll be crossing over to UPSA pretty shortly. Kojo Brace will join us with the very latest from there as the room gets filled from that particular university. Joining me in the studio right now is my colleague, Winston Amma, who obviously has been working his sources within the ranks of the Vice President. So an hour ago or so, we were speaking to the spokesperson, Miracle Sobwaji, who was very, very clear that Bawumia tonight will be charting that path. He will be showing us the different path, a different path to doing things differently. Yeah. And as I've repeated, Bawumia himself has said before that he's his own man, but has his own vision. So today, in essence, is Bawumia showing us that he's different from his boss, but also creating this clear departure between himself, the boss, and the way things have been done in the past. That is a very difficult maneuver that he must succeed in doing tonight.
Well, Evans, you know that, but for all the happenings of the last 2-3 years, maybe we wouldn't be focusing so much on what Bawumia would have to offer. The fact that, everybody would have his own vision. Everybody would have what he wants to do. But of course, a party would also have what it wants to do. And I've seen the video where Bawumia invited everybody to the UPSA auditorium, indicating that, yes, the philosophy is the same, but the vision will be different. And so the ways leading to the achievement of that philosophy would differ. This is it for me. So you want to find out, for instance, how different would Bawumia's vision be from President Akufo-Addo? as a country in itself, we've always had that broad vision, right, Evans? We've said we want to be a middle income. Well, now we're a middle income country, but we want to have a sustained macroeconomic stability. We've talked about, how we want to have a very educated population, particularly the youth. We've talked about how we want to get a lot of the unemployed youth employed. We've also talked about how we must raise enough revenue. Even our IMF program indicates how we want to raise enough revenue. We've talked about, and they introduced moving from taxation to production. We've talked about value addition. These are things that we've consistently talked about. These are things even the AU would agree, would admit we have to do. Now, what remains to be seen is how he, Dr. Bawumia, intends to achieve these, and how he, Dr. Bawumia, intends to do it differently from what Akufo-Addo did. This is what I am learning, Evans, that there will be a departure from Akufo-Addo. I'm learning, and if you speak to the spokespersons of Dr. Bawumia, they've indicated, for instance, that President Akufo-Addo also departed from President Kufuor. While President Kufuor, still was president, he indicated that one of the ways of attaining F-cube was ensuring that we pay capitation grant, right? Akufo-Addo has indicated that, okay, it has to be free SHS, not just free SHS, but even basic education has to be changed to include secondary education. These are a different way of going about things. President Kufuor, while he was in government, stayed with the basic education, making it free, trying to attain it. Akufo-Addo comes into government. He actually moves quickly to say, we want to make sure that we actually achieve a free secondary education. He's achieved that. But also, you did not have President Akufo-Addo consistently making the point when he became flag bearer of the NPP that his vision was different. Okay, now that you have it, a few things would come to mind, Evans. Why today is it so necessary for Dr. Bawumia to be talking about his own vision? What is it that is wrong with the Akufo-Addo vision that it's so important to the NPP and Dr. Bawumia to be telling us their own vision? Of course, we know that the happenings of the last 2 years have not been the best, particularly stemming from 2020, and even after 2020. Well, 2020 because of COVID, the elections, we saw a lot of things being done for the populace. By 2021, we're trumpeting the fact that we're doing well as a country. Then in 2022, we all saw what happened, and we all seen where we find ourselves today. Today, it will be important to hear Dr. Bawumia indicate the role he's played in government over the last 7 years. It will be important to hear Dr. Bawumia taking some of the blame or credit, whichever thing he does. We would want to know, for instance, because a lot of people have asked the question, what has been his role in government? He will tell us what role, how did he contribute to where we find ourselves today, and most importantly, how he decides to go out. Talking about how he decides to get us out of where we find ourselves, if elected, I'm learning that the speech has 15 broad thematic areas. I am learning that he's going to be talking about the management of our natural resources. He's going to be talking about taxation. He also will talk about how we can achieve macroeconomic stability over the long term. Not long ago, he was in Estonia, one of the most digitalized countries in the world. He would tell us how he believes we can use digitalization to transform the country and other areas that have not been told as of now. So we'll adopt a wait-and-see attitude and see what he has to say.
I see. And that's quite a bit of work that he has to today maneuver. And we're still waiting to go to UPSA. We haven't seen a shot just yet of the place, and I'm dying to see who's there. When we were speaking to the spokesperson, he was very clear that they're going to have in the auditorium a very diverse audience. They're going to be drawing from labor, the Guta, the people with disability, civil society, everybody else that they believe is important to be addressed directly will be in the room. And for them, this is important. So the vice president and the flag bearer addresses at least the needs of these people, all these diverse groups of people, and that the speech has been crafted to offer solutions to almost every part of the facet of this economy. That's why that is important. But I want to return to that point because obviously that is what all of us will be watching very closely in terms of Bawumia's biggest challenge, obviously, is because he's been part of a government.
Yeah.
He's been part of a government that has superintended over an economic crisis that is unprecedented, at least in the Fourth Republic, right? And he also then happens to be an economist himself, who excelled as a running mate in telling us what was possible. And coincidentally, his own slogan is "It is possible," and which is really what he stood for when he was the running mate, telling us what was possible in fixing a broken economy. At the time under John Mahama, the economy was broken. At least that was the time we had the worst economic experience, right? And so there was a lot of hype. Now he is going to be the man whose face will be on the ballot. But he's been part of a government that has taken us one step deeper into the hole as far as the economy is concerned. Now the shoulder, he has to shoulder all this today. That for me is the biggest challenge today. What he says to convince everybody that he is indeed different and he can do things differently. He's the vice president. You know the debate has been raging over the weekend when Kofi Bentil went ahead and said, give him a hearing. I believe today will be it will show, or he would be this will be the day when, and this speech would create a space for us to have the determination firmly, whether or not he deserves a hearing or not. And he himself must make the argument why he deserves a second hearing, why he deserves a fair hearing on the matter when he's been part of the government, right? The burden tonight is significant. And how he discharges that burden will determine a great deal how at least that middle class that, with a lot of guys in the villages, the masses won't really necessarily pay attention to them. But that middle class group of floating voter, this will be important, right? And those are the kinds of people who have already said in their minds, but you're part of what has happened. How does he go about doing that? That for me is going to be the most difficult.
I'll tell you what, you're very right. That's the challenge, that Bawumia finds himself in. Now, the NPP in the past, when there's digitalization, there's always the reference to Dr. Bawumia, as in this is what he stands for, and this is what he's leading, and this is what he's achieved. Now, when you are a part of a group, collective responsibility, and I was telling somebody, one of our bosses today, that I cannot go out when people meet us and criticize us for having done something, and then say, I wasn't the one who did it. In-house, I can tell you, I don't agree with what you did. But once I leave this company and someone approaches me and says, why did you people do this? The first thing I would have to do is to actually accept that we did it. If it wasn't a wrong thing, of course, I would defend it. If there's a need to apologize, I would apologize and say we would right the wrongs. At no point in time would I go out there and throw anybody under the bus and say this person was the one who did it. After all, there may be times I also would have done things wrongly that you would have to go out there and defend me. That's how it works. Yeah. So at this point in time, how will the NPP handle this? This is the point. If the NPP says, but Bawumia has not been in charge, and so the problems of the economy cannot be attributed to Bawumia, it means the NPP acknowledges that there are problems within the Ghanaian economy.
That's another thing today. He must acknowledge that there are problems, because there are problems.
Yes. So if you acknowledge there are problems, having acknowledged those problems, how then would you be able to, and having excused yourself, how then would you be able to convince people that you're better off than your opponent or your contender, John Mahama? You get the point I'm making? Yeah. Because then you're trying to say, oh, no, they caused the problem. It means you're running away from your shadow.
You must own it.
You must own it. What I am learning is that Dr. Bawumia today would explain his role in government. He would explain the state in which we are today, how we got here today, what he thinks government is doing to get us out of it. And of course, he would add what he will also do personally if elected as president. However, it remains to be seen how he's going to weave around this. If he blames somebody apart from himself, then It means you take credit for the goods of the government, but say, I have no say in the bads of the government. That cannot be the mark of a good leader. Because if you are part of a team, we go together. If you didn't agree on anything, and even you were, I mean, this is the point. If you didn't agree, they put it to a vote, and you lost. In our part of the world, we do not know how anybody voted, let alone in cabinet. But if you strongly disagree with things, what you do is you walk out and say, I don't want to be a part of this. I don't have a problem if Bawumia decides to move away from Akufo-Addo's agenda. I mean, that's true. If we're to chair the same meeting at different times, my suggestions may be different from your suggestions. Of course, we can come to a consensus, an agreement, and say, this is what we want to do. We don't expect Dr. Bawumia to think like President Akufo-Addo. But there's another point. He will tell us where he wants to get to, okay? But where he wants to get to would not solely be left to him to decide. Because once you say, this is what I intend to achieve, your political party will then sit down, because the manifesto will not be drafted alone by Dr. Bawumia Evans. Yeah. So another team would also sit down, and that team also would make proposals. And so this is he telling us broadly what he wants to do. Being the economist that he is, I am learning that he believes that tax is not the way to go.
Yeah, and this is something that he represented when he was a running mate, and he has to remain consistent.
Exactly.
Another major challenge that he faces is because of how successful he was as a running mate, he possibly is the only politician in this country whose past pronouncements are so obvious to find, to match what he's currently saying and doing, but not only personally, but what the government is doing right now. And so it's very easy, if you really want to run a campaign of before and after, to keep him honest. It's to simply go into the archive and find the Bawumia sounds and hold him accountable to that, compare that to what has happened under his watch as the vice president. And we'll come back to whether his watch is actually even a reference that should apply to him, concerning the debate about whether he has a say in what actually gets done in this republic. But because of that success, is the reason why he needs to today remain consistent on a number of things. He needs to be absolutely consistent on a number of things. We know that e-levy was something that he opposed. It's just in conflict with everything he stands for with digitalization, right? But he hasn't quite articulated his views on e-levy just yet.
He hasn't.
And ourselves have had many state of plays in which we've analyzed and said he must at some point take the bulls by the horn and show us that he's different, and be bolder in declaring that, yes, I have a different view to what has been implemented. So he needs to do that today. But here's a challenge that he faces. We still have at least 10 months, not even more than that, 11 months plus for his boss to exit, right? His boss still has the ultimate power. Does his boss acknowledge that to give him a chance to succeed on December 7th, I must be ready to eat humble pie on a number of things and take a bit of a departure from me that will draw criticism for myself while I'm still the president, but it is necessary for the ultimate interest of the party. I mean, does his boss acknowledge that that is a necessary step for him to take today? To say, yes, I've been under his leadership, but I disagree. He may not use the word disagree, but tell us how his views are different from his boss. And does his boss acknowledge that that is something that must happen right now, and that he may become he might take the fall. He has to take the fall now, because really he's done. Take the fall for Bawumia to move forward. But again, in terms of strategy, if he buys into this argument, and I'm saying all this because you've said he has to create a departure. His spokesperson says he will indeed create a departure. A lot will also depend on what the president does after this, going forward. That the difference Bawumia shows today, does he, subsequent to that, begin to buy into the Bawumia way of doing things as he articulated today? or continue to propagate policies that are in conflict with what Bawumia will say today.
Well,
I mean, there's a whole spectrum of things that must align for us to believe what he will say today, post today. And for me, that's the biggest challenge.
And that would depend on the president being aligned. If the president is not aligned, you don't expect that to happen.
Is he aligned?
That I do not know for now.
I think he is. Okay. I think he backed him in the race.
Yes, he did. That is not in doubt.
For his own legacy.
Yes.
For his own legacy, he needs Bawumia.
That I do not. I mean, well, this is it.
It makes sense.
This is it with
back him.
This is it with politicians, and I'm going to make a very controversial statement.
Please feel free.
Politicians would do anything. They can cut any deal. Okay, we've said before that politicians don't mind even cutting a deal with the devil. Okay, so politicians may not mind. I mean, so Nana-Addo may actually pretend that he agrees, but some of his allies could then go out there and plan your loss based on what you say today. They can go out there and also cut a deal with allies of John Mahama, because once they can secure, their freedom, or when they can secure the fact that they wouldn't be disturbed and anything, and their legacy would be intact, they wouldn't find. But this is the point I want to make, finally on all of this. See, the problem is this. Nana-Addo is president today. If he's aligned, then that would mean is that post this speech, there must be a reshuffle.
Immediately.
And the reshuffle should actually take out Ken Ofori-Atta.
Necessarily.
And then have somebody that is loyal to Dr. Bawumia as finance minister. That remains to be seen if that person can turn anything around within the next 10 months.
But that remains to be seen if the MPP wants to have a real shot at denting the NDC's chance on December 7. It's no longer about Bawumia or the party. If this must happen, it must happen.
Yes.
And everybody agrees. Any serious political watcher with any acumen to analyze agree that beyond the speech, setting real, hard, practical steps must follow the speech to give him the evidence he needs to show us that he's different. And people will give him the credit, not the president, that yes, Bawumia has now stated his position, and shortly after that, he's convinced the president to do away with setting deadwood in his own government, including his overhead finance minister. So that will give him such a strong win in his sale.
So if that would happen, if there's an agreement to have Ken Ofori-Atta go, for instance, then if you're Bawumia, what you must do today is to take responsibility as a part of the team. If you do that, and Ken Ofori-Atta goes, then all of us as watchers can reasonably infer that he probably may be the problem.
And somebody in politics always gets sacrificed. And,
exactly.
And this is the time for sacrifices.
Exactly. So don't say it.
Show it. And it's Ken ready to take the hit. That's the whole comment. Oh, just hold on. This is very, very interesting.
I have a lot to say after
very
that.
interesting day indeed. I want to take you to the UPSA campus where my colleague Kojo Brace is standing by. Hello, Kojo. Yeah, his thoughts very, very soon. But I'm also looking forward to seeing the sort of people that we're having a terrible connection to him right now. We'll reconnect. You were making the point, and when Breeze and the team are ready, we'll go.
Yeah. So the point I'm making is that if that agreement has been reached, do not go out there to say, I disagreed. Just go ahead, take the blame as part of a team. Because consistently, the NPP has said they've done better than the NDC. So if you've done better than the NDC, you say that your problems are COVID-19 and Russia, Ukraine, this is not the time to depart from those, pronouncements. Stick to those pronouncements, stick to that argument, and then move on. Because you said these were our problems, but for that would have done better. Don't change the argument today and say, oh, no, he wasn't part of it. Because you have said that you've done well compared to John Mahama and compared to 8 years of the NDC. So if you've beaten them when it comes to the macroeconomic indicators, stick to that argument, stick to that debate. Do not, at this point, sacrifice anybody. The bit about a fair hearing, everybody deserves a fair hearing. Everybody.
The rule of natural justice.
Yes.
Just can't do anything about
yes,
it.
and I have said consistently, I'll tell you a funny story. Somebody asked of my opinion. Somebody said he expects my opinion. And I said, as to believability or not, I can't tell you what to believe. I can tell you what I think may be feasible or not. But everybody deserves a fair hearing. And this is the other aspect of politics. You do not win election only by the failures of a government or your opponent. You also would win election by indicating what it is that you want to do and how you can achieve that. Then people will now begin to do the analysis of what is it that he's done in the past? What is it that he said in the past? Can we believe him? Can we not believe him? So then you would have to rely on your credibility. So if you're Dr. Bawumia, what is it that is your credibility? So I have done these. I have done that. If you're able to convince everybody that, okay, you're a chairman of the economic management team, part of the things that you were assigned to do also in ensuring a smooth economy was to digitize the Ghanaian economy, which you can report that you've been able to achieve. Yes, we're able to achieve this and that, but happenings of 2020, 2022 have derailed those efforts. You're making a lot of sense. But if you say, oh, I did this, and this one caused us that problem, I'm sorry. We probably would come back and say, hold on a minute. And then we'll spend time analyzing you're assigning blame to another person instead of focusing on what your vision statement is. And any politician would want people to focus on what their vision is and not whom they are blaming. Okay, so I have indicated everybody deserves a fair hearing. I expect Dr. Bawumia to acknowledge that times are hard because on the 7th of April in 2023, we were here, Evans, we were here, when he addressed us at the Pentecost Convention Center, he said that the reality, the state of the economy is how you feel in your pocket. And I agreed with him. The state of the economy, no matter all the things you tell us, is what you feel in your pocket. Today, as a man who likes figures, as a man who likes data, he should be able to tell how Ghanaians feel to actually create the narrative that he's done well.
The challenge is an enormous one indeed for the Vice President today as we build into this almighty speech for him. It's a make or break one, really, because the central question is, okay, how do you distinguish yourself, separate yourself from what has been? You made a point at the beginning. If everything else was okay, and the economy was thriving, and we're not on an IMF program, this wouldn't have been such a big deal.
No, it wouldn't be.
We've just been looking forward to, telling us his plans to take us to the next level. This is not a conversation about the next level. This is a conversation about fixing what is broken, right? Yeah. That's what this conversation is about.
Yeah.
What he really needed to do today was to telling us how he's going to take us in that. But because of the current economic challenges, he may not be able to do that just yet. And coming back to the fair hearing point, it is just natural that everybody does. And I want to go back to and politics has a way of reminding us of history. But then you put that in a historical context. I remember very well when, after the 2016 elections, and many people wrote off John Dramani Mahama.
Yeah.
Absolutely many people wrote off John Dramani Mahama. And then shortly thereafter, he sort of dropped out from the public view for quite a while and came back and he delivered a speech in which he began to talk about the lessons he's learned and the mistakes that he made and how he's committed to sort of fixing that going forward. If you remember that speech.
I remember.
And that was the beginning of the comeback. And many people still thought that isn't something that we want to hear. But over time, this government's own misdeeds have made it a stronger case, right? And Ghanaians are ready to give him a hearing. And all the polls and the predictions that we've seen in the reports suggest that the NDC, they are the front runners in this particular race. They have the momentum on their side. From a John Mahama in 2016, who many had written off, to now being the party most likely to win elections. It's quite a feat. But a combination of factors must come to play for the hearing to be had, right? The individual candidate himself must show that he has something about him that reeks of competence, but also distinction, right? Distinction in terms of excellence, doing the job, but also distinction from what we used to know. That's one. But then circumstances surrounding him must also come to his own favor. As it is now, the circumstances around him, as in the economy, the running of the government, the controversies that, and today we were talking about the NSA issues on the morning show, and people were calling it, those circumstances hasn't helped him. So whereas, yes, it's true, yeah, you have to give him a hearing, people will give him a hearing when they begin to feel that something is changing in their personal circumstance, right?
Yeah.
And that is the fill in your pocket question. John Mahama's hearing happened because people started feeling a certain pinch in the way this current administration is being held. It's being managed. That for me is his major challenge. But we have 10 months to go. 10 months is a long time in politics.
Very long time.
A very long time. And a lot can change between now and then. In fact, even if you look at the NDC guys, they really don't, nobody in the ranks of the NDC wants to say, yeah, I mean, we've won it just yet, because complacency can set in. And that's where you got really shocked. And I was in the US when I was in, Trump won elections. And 2-3 weeks to the poll, the Democrats, led by Hillary, the poll said they were winning this hands down.
Yeah.
And so they were absolutely complicit. Why do I know? Because I was stationed in part of the U.S. in Missouri, and where I was staying was right next to the Democratic local office. And the place was constantly empty. And yet, when I walk a few, 2-3 kilometers down to the Republican office, the place was full. The activity was there, the excitement, the energy. 1 week to the elections, when the FBI boss came out with the announcement that investigations were going to happen and the polls started turning, that's when I started seeing the office getting populated. So complacency is something that in politics you need to get again. It was too late then to overturn what has happened, right? So the NDC appreciates that. Bawumia's challenge is, today, starting with today, giving us a speech and an address that at least begin to get people to say, well, maybe all the challenge I'm facing and the challenge with my pocket is not down to him after all, and that maybe I should look at him slightly differently. The best thing he can hope for today is to get people, after the end of when he's done with the speech, to get people to start thinking, maybe I've been judging him wrongly. I've been putting him, as they call it, fallacy of composition. I've been judging him based on what has been happening with the group he's part of, and maybe he's different. That's how people beginning to look at him differently, and taking him out of the challenges that the group has created for him. Look, does he get that?
Well, it depends on how he conducts himself. And this is something I think mustn't come from him. You stated here that all of us, some of our sources, even within government, and it didn't start today, may have said that, Bawumia was against e-levy. But when he had a chance to address the nation last year, he talked about, because of the challenges associated with revenue mobilization, we've had to introduce new ways of generating revenue, like the e-levy. He didn't say at the time that it was wrong. You remember that? So at that point in time, you didn't say it was wrong. You actually, as part of the government, went with it. And I say, stick to the plan. Go with it. But of course, today, you can tell us what you stand for. Tell us what you stand for without bastardizing what has happened in the past.
Well, but there's a way in which the way he puts that would tell us if he's bastardizing it or not.
Yes, but so I am saying, people say there are things the chief says, and there are things that the linguist says. There could be things, so there should be things that shouldn't come out of Dr. Bawumia's mouth. And some things that should also not even come out from a spokesperson. You leave that to party communicators to say. And people may believe or not believe it, okay? Let them throw things out. But for you should not be the one leading that charge. You know what I'm trying to say? Yeah. What I'm trying to say is that, look, didn't Yawo Safo praise Dr. Bawumia when he said, and let me thank the young man, Mamudu Bawumia. He's been so wonderful. He's been helping. So you've been praised at different times. When things go bad and people say, take part of the blame, it's also because you are a victim of your success. You led a campaign in 2016. You
Although his face was on the ballot.
Yes, led a campaign right from 2014, 15 up to 2015. Yeah. I mean, you were able to shape conversations in the country. Congratulations to you on that score. But today, what you did in the past, the sound bites you gave, the tweets associated with you may come back to haunt you. Don't run away from it.
Is it also possible, one of the ways he can also create that difference between himself and the negatives of the government he's been part of, is going back to the projects, the policies that he's been directly responsible for implementing? And this is what I mean. He's arguably been Ghana's most productive vice president, right? I mean, historically, our vice presidents have been ceremonial. I mean, you struggle to find anything you can hold, you can put their names, other than, clean our streets and maintain cleanliness and, representing some form of a social intervention of a sort, not necessarily government policy. But for him, his story is different. You can look for real government interventions that was couched and originated from his office and implemented from there. Digitalization. Everything this government has done in that sector, and there's a lot there, came from his office, and it was implemented by his folks. And you can start all the way back to Ghana Post GPS, to the digitalization of the Ghana.gov, which is a fundamental government portal for government business. Just name it. Just a whole lot of things.
The paperless ports and everything, which was under his office. Yeah, a lot of things.
One of the most essential revenue-making institutions in this country, the ports. Those are two. Yeah. And then you go to the Sino-Hydro.
Yes.
The Sino-Hydro, he flew to China, negotiated it, came and announced it.
Yeah.
Right? That was a big project. And linked to the Sino-Hydro, it is GIADEG. Yes. Because that whole infrastructure that was set up was designed to execute this whole conversation that we've had with China with the Sino-Hydro, because it was very integrated in the way they did it. So China brings the money, they had to take the bauxite out, but you need to create a vehicle to manage that and create value. So it was a chain. Yeah. So he did that. That, again, is to his name. And we've seen that the Tamale interchange is a direct result of that, right? Others have not quite materialized the way they anticipated for whatever reason. I mean, so I can count 4. And if you really look at it, you can find a bit more.
Of course, there's a lot more.
There's a lot more, right? Can he today begin to isolate these policies and government direct intervention to solving the real challenges of the day and show to us how successful these had been, right? Compared to the other things that the government had done that had not quite been as successful, right? Yeah. In other words, this is yes, I'm part of a government, but as an individual, I led policies. This is the outcome of that intervention, right? He leaves it there, and then we can now make a comparison. And it doesn't necessarily have to say, E-levy didn't work and it's not mine. But he can say, I did the things I mentioned, and look at the results. So that is to his name.
Yeah.
The others aren't to his name. It is to the government's name. The best thing you can say is the government is a amorphous entity. Can he do that?
He would.
Would that be a smart strategy for him, considering how productive it's been?
He will do that. He will do that.
I see.
He will do that. And I made the point earlier that he should do that and not disagree with existing government. I mean, and not say I wasn't in charge of and assign blames to anybody. All I have said is that he deserves a fair hearing. Who doesn't? Everybody does. But you are part of a team. Take credit for the successes. Take the blame for the failures. I am saying we were part of it. And who doesn't know that Dr. Bawumia has been the one leading the digitalization agenda? Everybody knows. Everybody knows that. Some of us, I know in the past, some of us signed that to the Ministry of Communications and Digitalization. And watch this carefully. When you begin to say, the vice president role is a ceremonial, and then we'll begin to ask you, so why are you claiming anything? Why do you want to take credit for anything? So I am saying, the things that you're credited for, the successes of the government, a lot are credited to you. Take it and say, that notwithstanding, we've had challenges, but this is how we intend to solve these challenges. And look, we will come back tomorrow and begin to address his vision, begin to dissect it and say, is this feasible? Is this not feasible? Based on where we find ourselves currently, how long is that going to take us? We'll dissect everything. I mean, starting tomorrow, I'm sure from next week we'd have had a lot of time to conduct enough research on all of these things, look at them, and, because by the time he's done with his speech, within the next 6, 7, 8 hours, you're back on air. You'll be able to dissect it, but in detail, you do so from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So all I am saying, and you've made the point, all I am saying is that we know there are areas that you have been successful. You've achieved a lot for the government and for the country. Areas that may not have gone well. But this is not the time to blame anybody. If there's anything you have to do, admit there are challenges, accept the failures of the government, and now tell us your vision. How do you intend to address these? For me, that's the most important thing. As for the blame game, leave it to your followers. When they go around and they do the blame game, we see that sometimes people, you allow the young ones to go ahead and make mistakes. Then you call them and say, hey, we don't talk like that. And that's what I expect him to do.
Well, he was supposed to start at 5. It's 5 now. We take a quick break. We'll be right back.